Tonight, Liberal leadership candidates face off for the first time. Head-to-head in French, putting pressure on the front-runner.
Tonight is about showing that he gets it. He gets French voters.
The importance of Quebec in the race to replace Justin Trudeau. A disturbing attack in Halifax, a 6-year-old stabbed, apparently at random.
Oh, it's very, very tragic. It's a very, very tragic incident.
Now the mother of the accused is speaking out. The push for peace in Ukraine.
We're trying to get the war ended.
Donald Trump hints Russia may not concede territory as Justin Trudeau shows support in Ukraine.
And certainly Canada will be involved.
And doesn't rule out boots on the ground.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. Tonight, Liberal leadership candidates faced off in the first of two debates in the race to replace Justin Trudeau as party leader and prime minister. In Montreal, 4 candidates in the spotlight: Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould, and Frank Baylis. High on the list of topics, how would each handle U.S.-Canada relations in this time of Trump and economic issues at home? So this debate happening, of course, in the shadow of Donald Trump's threats against Canada. And as Rafi Boudjikanian shows us, that is a hot topic.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Bienvenue.
4 contenders on this stage vying to lead the Liberal Party of Canada and to become the next Prime Minister. And right out of the gate, a big topic was Donald Trump's tariff threats and how to grow the Canadian economy.
Trump. Mr. Trump.
Donald Trump.
None of the candidates are francophone, but the debate is entirely in French, and the Liberals rely on Quebec support to win in general elections. So language proficiency is important, but Quebecers also want to see proof the contenders understand French culture, says this pollster.
It needs to feel and sound genuine, because Francophones are very sensitive to that.
And Mark Carney's performance in particular is being watched closely. He's seen as the frontrunner, polling high in Quebec.
Tonight is about showing that he gets it. He gets French voters. He gets how to connect with them. And obviously voters, it's going to be the first time that they really have a chance to hear him live and see how he can think on his feet in French.
The former central banker has been pitching himself as an outsider, a more difficult task for former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, who is trying to distance herself from Justin Trudeau. She pitched herself as the person who's already taken on Donald Trump.
Trump représente la plus grande menace.
And said Trump represented the biggest threat to Canada since the Second World War.
Mr. Trump, c'est un intimidateur.
Frank Baylis calling Trump a bully, adding, "We don't give an inch to bullies."
On doit renforcer notre économie.
From Karina Gould, a call to reinforce Canada's economy in the face of Trump's threats. Carney taking the same approach.
Il faut concentrer sur les choses on peut contrôler.
We can't control them, he said. We have to be a master in our own house. Affordability, healthcare, and climate change all came up in the second hour of the debate as the contenders started attacking the opposition Conservatives' positions on these issues.
So, Rafi, speaking of the Conservatives, there's a moment that already has them attacking Mark Carney.
Yeah, so keeping in mind Carney is not as comfortable in French, there was a section about the Middle East when Frank Baylis said that to resolve the Israel-Hamas conflict, everyone agrees that a two-state solution is necessary. Carney jumped in and in French said they all agree with Hamas. Chrystia Freeland corrected him, said they don't agree with Hamas. Carney then said against Hamas, against Hamas. He also clarified his comments again in English after the debate.
I said that we all were in agreement against Hamas, or at least the intention. No, just I look forward, if I'm selected as Liberal leader, I look forward to having a debate avec Yves, François Blanchet et Pierre Poilievre dans la langue française.
After tonight, it's quite possible that the leaders of the Bloc Québécois and Conservatives also look forward to that debate with Mark Carney too, Adrian.
Indeed. All right, Rafi Boudjikanian in Ottawa, thank you. So let's bring in Chief Political Correspondent Rosie Barton. So Rosie, can we talk about tone here? What's your sense of how the candidates, how they handled themselves and each other?
It was a very friendly debate, Adrian, and I use the term debate pretty loosely here because there was a lot of violent agreement on a lot of different issues. In fact, Chrystia Freeland called it a race inside the family. And so there wasn't a lot of opportunity for people to distinguish themselves from one another. That is very difficult in a leadership race, right? You're trying to convince Liberal members to vote for you, that you would be the best to take on Pierre Poilievre and Donald Trump, and not do damage to your colleague that you may end up having to work with or for going forward. That said, I don't think that this debate changed anything fundamentally at this stage anyway. Mark Carney comes out maybe a little bit damaged, and we'll talk about that, but still the front runner. Chrystia Freeland is still trying to stay in the game, and Karina Gould and Frank Baylis did very well for what they were trying to do tonight.
So, Rosie, I mean, it's a French language debate without a francophone, and certainly that seems to have affected Mark Carney, as we saw. But overall, how did they perform in that respect?
Frank Baylis is a Montreal businessman, so he's an Anglophone, but very, very high-functioning Francophone French speaker, very conversational. Karina Gould, also very strong. Chrystia Freeland held her own, but you're right. Mark Carney, as well as that issue that Rafi highlighted, definitely the weakest in French. And the bar here is really how would he fare in a debate, as he said, against Pierre Poilievre and Yves-François Blanchet. And the answer tonight is he's not ready for that yet.
Okay. All right. Rosie Barton, thank you.
Thanks.
So as we mentioned, this was the first of two Liberal leadership debates. The English one will be held tomorrow. Rosie and David Cochrane will host special coverage beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern on CBC News Network. Well, Donald Trump says those tariffs on Canada and Mexico will take effect next week as planned.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries.
The U.S. is set to impose 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports and a 10% levy on energy starting March the 4th. The measure was paused for 30 days after Canada agreed to introduce new security measures at the border. Well, late tonight, in a social media post, Donald Trump says he wants the Keystone XL pipeline to be built. So the pipeline was proposed in 2008 to bring oil from Canada's oil sands to U.S. refineries. It was opposed for years by environmental groups, and work on it was stopped after Joe Biden revoked a key permit needed for the U.S. stretch of the project. Well, Donald Trump was not among the world leaders who converged on Ukraine today to mark the third anniversary of Russia's war. Justin Trudeau was there, though, to discuss how to end the conflict and Canada's potential role. But as Chris Brown explains from Kyiv tonight, there is a competing push for peace by the United States and Russia.
With the scent of U.S. betrayal in the air, Justin Trudeau came to Kyiv in a show of solidarity with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
How important it is to continue to stand with Ukraine and figure out a way to create a just and lasting peace.
Trudeau was far from alone, but missing in action on this third anniversary of Russia's invasion was any senior representative of Donald Trump's administration, though Trudeau did lead a virtual G7 meeting that included both Trump and Zelenskyy.
President Trump, we would really like to hear from you because all our people, all our families are very worried. Will there be support from America?
Trump has started negotiating with Russia directly, without Ukraine, claiming he believes Vladimir Putin wants peace, a notion openly scoffed at in Kyiv.
Putin is trying harder than ever to win the war on the ground. His goal remains Ukraine's capitulation.
For Canada's part, Trudeau announced it's sending Ukraine 25 more light armored vehicles. And using seized Russian assets as collateral, Canada will send the first installment of an eventual $5 billion to Ukraine.
Oui, c'est absolument possible.
Trudeau also opened up the possibility that Canada could have boots on the ground in the country as part of a post-war security guarantee.
When we establish the way we're going to keep a lasting peace, I can tell you I'm certain that Canada will be involved, but we're not at that position yet.
Beyond the gathering on Kyiv's frozen Dnipro River, we found Ukrainians reluctantly coming to the same conclusion as the European leaders, that the war against Russia may have to be fought without U.S. help. A lot depends on how Europe will act now, said Vladislav. Will it stop looking to America and start making its own decisions? It looks like we've been played in some kind of game, says Victoria, and now Russia and America are dividing up our territories among themselves. Time and again, Adrian, the European leaders emphasized a bad ceasefire for Ukraine now will enable more Russian aggression in the near future.
So we heard some leaders, Chris, sounding pretty determined after this meeting. What is the plan going forward?
Well, there were announcements of several more big donations of money and weapons for Ukraine. And in Germany, the likely incoming Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, said his country must consider a world without U.S. military support, maybe even without NATO, with Europe standing largely alone. It is an immense shift that's only really beginning to be thought through, but it has unmistakable urgency. Adrian.
All right, Chris Brown in Kyiv for us tonight. So that growing rift between the U.S. and Europe was on display at the White House today as French President Emmanuel Macron met with Donald Trump. The two leaders are at odds about how the war in Ukraine ends and what caused it in the first place. Paul Hunter shows us where they stand.
With U.S. and European relations at best strained right now, French President Emmanuel Macron came to the White House to meet with a man he calls a friend. High on the list of issues for both he and U.S. President Donald Trump, Ukraine.
We're trying to get the war ended with Russia and Ukraine.
Key to that, as Trump has made clear before, a deal giving the U.S. access to Ukraine's super valuable critical minerals.
It looks like we're getting very close.
Payback, Trump has said, for the billions in wartime aid the U.S. has given Ukraine. In return, Ukraine could get continued U.S. support.
I think once we settle, there's going to be no more war in Ukraine, and you're not going to have it's not going to be a very big problem.
But what might Russia get for ending its brutal, now 3-year assault? Put to Trump was whether Ukraine will ever get back all the land Russia has forcibly taken, land Ukraine has always demanded be returned. Trump suggested maybe, but maybe not.
Perhaps some of it, yeah, I hope so. But that's not an easy thing to do.
Whatever shape peace would take, Trump also noted he's spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who says he'd be fine with European troops in Ukraine as peacekeepers. As for Macron, we want peace, he said, but that peace cannot mean capitulation by Ukraine. There cannot be a ceasefire with no guarantees, and there must be Ukrainian sovereignty.
Macron also underlined the divide between the European view of the war and the U.S. view. Days after Trump stunned the West by saying Ukraine started the war, Macron, sitting in the Oval Office next to Donald Trump, called Russia the aggressor as Trump looked on. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Let's turn now to Italy and the concerns for the health of Pope Francis. You're looking at St. Peter's Square, nearly empty, of course, at this hour, but for centuries, a gathering place for Catholics to show their faith. So Briar Stewart is right there at the Vatican. So Briar, can you tell us what you've been seeing, what you've been hearing?
Well, here in St. Peter's Square, Adrian, a few thousand people gathered to pray for the Pope's recovery. And the latest update that we are getting from the Vatican suggests that his health has slightly improved. Now, we have to remember that he is 88 years old. He remains in critical condition, and he has pneumonia in both lungs. He's also still on oxygen, but doctors have been able to reduce the amount that he's receiving. And he does have mild kidney failure, but officials say at this point it isn't a cause for concern. Now, what is significant is that since Saturday, he hasn't had any more respiratory crises, basically an asthma attack. And that is significant. But this is all being said. I mean, it's still a very serious time. Doctors say his condition is severe. This is the longest time that he has been in the hospital, but the Pope seems determined to keep working. And in fact, Adrian, he had a call with the only Roman Catholic parish in Gaza today.
So, Briar, I understand that there was a crowd gathered there earlier in the night to pray for him. And is that going to happen nightly now?
It is. It's going to happen every night until officials say the Pope recovers. And we were here as it got underway. There were a few thousand people in the crowd. There were a number of families and also members of the clergy.
We are worried. We are worried because this time he could not make it, and we are worried, obviously, for the Holy Father, and we come to pray.
We as priests feel especially that sense of responsibility and connection with our shepherd. So it's important to be here tonight and share that moment of prayer with one another.
Now, normally every Sunday, the Pope delivers a public prayer from one of the balconies in St. Peter's Square. This was the second weekend that he was unable to do that. Instead, he thanked the public for all of their support and prayers.
All right, Briar Stewart at the Vatican. Thanks, Briar. Along with those prayers, Pope Francis is getting high-level medical attention to try to deliver him through his illness. Jennifer Yoon asked Canadian doctors what he's up against.
Hospitalized for over a week now for Pope Francis, the crucial battle is in his lungs. Vatican doctors say the Pope has a polymicrobial respiratory tract infection. In plain language, there's a growing mix of bacteria, viruses, fungi, or parasites, and it's affecting both of his lungs. He's been prone to lung infections since he was a young man, when the lining of his lungs became inflamed and part of one lung was removed. The Vatican says the Pope is receiving oxygen therapy.
With a device called high-flow nasal cannula, which is a breathing machine that delivers very high flows of oxygen through the nose. It helps the patients when they're tired, so they get a little bit more rest.
Vatican doctors now say they're reducing the oxygen flow.
The fact that his oxygen is decreasing is a wonderful sign that he is improving.
But doctors say there's still cause for concern. The Pope's kidneys are in trouble. The Vatican says they're sustaining damage and possibly at the early stages of shutting down. But the damage can be reversed, says this kidney specialist.
With the right types of treatment, antibiotics, other types of supportive treatments that we can provide in hospital, even if somebody does have mild kidney injury, it can recover.
But some are warning, even if he recovers, it may not be easy on his body or his mind.
Can people as frail and elderly as Pope Francis recover from such a condition? The answer is yes, we've seen it. At what cost? There's always a cost.
Vatican doctors are still being guarded about the Pope's prognosis. They say the situation is too complex, but also that there are positive signs. Pope Francis is reportedly awake, in good spirits, and eating. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Here in Canada, a 6-year-old boy is in hospital tonight after a horrific stabbing attack in Halifax.
Oh, it's very, very tragic. It's a very, very tragic incident.
What we're learning about the incident and the accused next. Plus, how Donald Trump's tariff threats could make Canada's housing crisis even worse.
The price of everything will go up.
The effect it's already having on new construction. And later, a golden moment for an elite athlete.
It is Desirae Ridenour for the lead, for the win here in Napier.
World Cup dreams come true for a Canadian triple threat. We're back in 2. Irving Paper is permanently reducing operations at its St. John, New Brunswick plant and immediately laying off 140 of its 310 employees. The company blames what it calls the province's uncompetitive electricity rates. Well, a disturbing attack targeting a child has left Halifax residents shaken. A 6-year-old boy was stabbed multiple times by a stranger. A 19-year-old woman is now charged with attempted murder. As Kayla Hounsell tells us, the accused mother says she's been trying to get help for her daughter for years.
It happened here in the middle of the afternoon. A 6-year-old boy stabbed multiple times, attacked by someone he doesn't know, taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries.
It's a very, very tragic incident.
Police say they were called to this busy transit thoroughfare in downtown Halifax around 1:20 Sunday. They say one of the boy's parents was instrumental in ensuring the suspect remained on scene. Investigators have charged 19-year-old Elliot Chorney with attempted murder and possession of a weapon dangerous to public peace. They say she was carrying a knife.
I confirm these are very serious allegations.
course, very tragic. I confirm the Public Prosecution Service works every day to protect the public by applying the law.
Court documents show Chorney is also facing a previous assault charge. Nova Scotia Health says she was allegedly involved in an incident at this Halifax hospital last month. The doctor involved is not commenting, as that case is also still before the courts. Chorney's mother tells CBC News her daughter was experiencing homelessness and that she wasn't living at home because it wasn't safe for her other child. In a social media post, she writes, "She is my daughter. I love her deeply, but due to her unchecked mental health, I haven't known her for a long time. She is a severely unwell person, and her father and I have been trying desperately for years to get her the help she needs." Nova Scotia's premier expressed his sadness over the attack, saying the person who did this is clearly a threat to the public and should be kept locked behind bars.
We are asking anyone who was in the area that may have witnessed the incident, anyone with video, to come forward and contact police.
For now, Chorney will remain in police custody. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
Many Canadians are feeling worried about the prospect of Trump's tariffs, and kids aren't immune.
I decided to ask Mom because I had a feeling she'd know.
How parents and teachers are taking on some difficult questions. Plus, the threat of a trade war is taking a toll on Canada's housing market.
They look at those projects that they might have on their drawing board, they may no longer be economically viable.
The chilling effect already being felt. And Donald Trump has called Ukraine's leader a dictator, but is an election realistic in the middle of the war?
Millions of Ukrainians had to flee when the full-scale invasion started in February 2022.
The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next.
I heard he sang a good song. I heard he had a style.
Roberta Flack being remembered tonight for the artistry behind her smash hits. She won 2 Grammys for this one.
Killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song.
Flack was the first artist to win Record of the Year 2 years in a row as she pioneered the R&B subgenre Quiet Storm.
The first time ever I saw.
I think that was the payoff, that I got a chance to be somewhere and, underneath some little light with somebody listening to me sing my heart out and play what I wanted to do.
Roberta Flack died today in New York. She was 88. U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to Canada over tariffs and annexation are provoking anxiety for parents who just aren't sure how to discuss it with their kids. As Deanna Sumanak-Johnson reports, there are some strategies you can use to help them navigate it all.
That looks like a butterfly.
It's not a question a parent typically expects to get from their 11-year-old.
When I heard tariffs, I had a feeling that it had to do something with Donald Trump. So I decided to ask Mom because I had a feeling she'd know.
Do you work with my school?
She did know. It helps that Harper's mom is also a social studies teacher.
The idea that it is a way to encourage extra growth within one's own country, to encourage people to buy homemade or products that are from their own country.
Substantial tariffs will impose new tariffs. It's one of the most beautiful words the world has taken.
Donald Trump's statements on Canada, heard on the news or through social media, may provoke questions or anxiety among Canadians of all ages. This professor of child psychology says if it worries you, broach it with your kids.
Asking themselves how much the tariffs are affecting them and their family personally, and also whether the parents have strong emotions about it themselves, because the more that that's true, then I would suggest talking about it even with the youngest children, even preschool age children.
With teens, she says parents should tread more carefully and not impose their own views.
I'd probably start by asking the teen what it is they've heard, and then I'd ask them what they think about it.
When it comes to classroom discussions, some teachers see this as a moment of opportunity.
I think it's helped students to see that what they're learning in social studies class is actually relevant to the real world.
NAFTA, the WTO, the EU. They just see that as something they have to memorize for a test. And now we can relate it to current events.
So where has this happened before in our history? What has that led to? What has been the impact? And what can we learn from it?
Making sense of it together as kids and adults are now living through a tumultuous chapter in Canada's history. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. Donald Trump has called Ukraine's president a dictator without elections, even suggesting Ukraine started the war.
You've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it.
So we'll break down Trump's rhetoric and the fears that Putin is pulling the strings as Ukraine enters its 4th year of conflict. But first,
The tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule.
in the middle of a housing crisis in this country, we have a looming trade war.
This will make it worse.
The price of everything will go up.
From upending an integrated supply chain to higher construction costs, what it could all mean for new home buyers and renters. As Lauren Bird tells us, just the threat of tariffs is already casting a shadow over what can be built as Canada looks to raise its housing stock.
For decades, construction supplies, drywall, appliances, lumber, and steel have traveled more or less freely between Canada, the US, and Mexico. That's likely changing on March 12th.
This is the beginning of making America rich again.
Canadian steel and aluminum is expected to get hit with 25% tariffs in the US. Last year, the US imported 6 million tons of steel and 3.2 million tons of aluminum from Canada, more than any other country. And while that will make things more expensive for Americans, it's also going to make it more expensive for Canadians.
Any new construction will be affected by increased material costs from those items sourced from the US that are subject to a tariff.
Because here's the thing, steel doesn't always just go over the border once. The Canadian and American steel industries are intricately linked. Canada might produce the raw materials and send them to the US to become a beam, which may then get sent back to Canada. It's similar to the auto industry.
We hear about how a part will cross the border, 8 times before it ends up in a finished product. We have a lot of fabricators that do work in the United States. They will source their wide flange or I-beam from the United States, fabricate it here, and then ship it back into the United States for a project there.
So in the middle of a housing crisis, these tariffs and the threat of more are likely going to raise the cost of any new build or even stop new projects from happening.
We're already behind in catching up on supply. This will make it worse. And with material costs now increasing, a lot of projects that might go ahead may just be shelved again.
And that's just the start, because this could get a whole lot more complicated.
Our response, of course, will be firm and clear.
Right. Canada plans to retaliate, potentially slapping tariffs on a whole bunch of products that come from the US.
If there are retaliatory tariffs, then there's a multiplier effect on those costs as well, because what happens if at some point there's a threat of a tariff on lumber or gypsum or cement? You start with one and then it will just start snowballing.
Check out this list the Canadian government published earlier this month about what it would be willing to tariff. On it, pretty much everything you need to build a house or a high-rise building. Lumber, concrete, windows, shingles, and of course, steel. And pretty quickly, a lot of those products could get a whole lot more expensive. Now, builders could try and buy locally. That might work in some cases, but thanks to those highly integrated supply chains, when it comes to multi-unit construction, so everything from low-rise to high-rise buildings, in many cases, there isn't another option but to buy materials from the US. Take that I-beam that goes across the border. They support floors, roofs, and walls in both residential and commercial buildings. You can't build without them. And the kicker? Most of them are produced in the US.
We use thousands of tons of wide flange beams to form the structure and the skeleton of a building. All of that would be imported from the United States.
So factor in that more expensive I-beam in every apartment and condo building under construction.
Well, the price of everything will go up.
Loomis says it would take several years and billions of dollars for manufacturers to pivot and produce them en masse in Canada. And that's just one steel product. If all those other construction materials were tariffed as well,
we have no idea where that would stop. Anything that is in high demand going into home construction, cement, rebar, things like that, if there are tariffs that are hitting those, it's just going to continue to drive the costs up. If it goes on for too long, because there is just no choice, builders are going to have to stop.
Now, this has not happened yet, and it's not clear that it will. But just the threat alone is already having an impact on builders and the construction industry.
Lenders are going to be nervous about how can their particular customer go ahead and start building something when they don't even know what the cost is going to be of a material that they're going to source 18 months from now. That's a big problem, and it's possibly going to drive investment capital elsewhere.
Because many large apartment and condo buildings are planned years in advance, and the budgeting that goes into them has to be as specific and as precise as possible.
It's itemized down to almost the last nut and bolt.
Building a model based on everything in flux doesn't give you a great outcome.
And there are a couple problems with this situation. One is that the cost of buying or renting that unit when it's completed skyrockets because all these new costs in the building process. So when a buyer comes to purchase a condo or a renter to rent, they just can't afford it. The uncertainty surrounding all of this, says Michael Brooks, is already leading to canceled projects.
It is fear of the unknown, and that may be the bigger problem than just the computation of the dollar impact, is that loss of confidence.
They look at those projects that they might have on their drawing board, they may no longer be economically viable.
And for a country already in a housing crisis, where analysts say we need millions of new housing units in the next few years, a lack of building today means fewer homes just a few years down the road.
So it's possible that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
So as you can see, there is a lot of concern coming from the industry, primarily when it comes to costs, Adrienne, and what it's going to take to get anything built right now.
So given all that, what is the Canadian government saying?
Well, just this past weekend, the housing minister acknowledged publicly for the first time that this is going to be a real issue for housing. And he agreed with what most of the experts told us, that a tariff war with the United States, while it might be necessary, is really going to put Canada at odds with the mandate to build more housing. And the further we go down that road, the more this is going to cost.
And the longer it's going to take.
Right.
All right, Lauren Bird, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, Donald Trump shocked the world when he called Volodymyr Zelenskyy a dictator and blamed Ukraine for the war Russia started.
You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
Andrew Chang, host of About That, breaks down Trump's claims and the deteriorating relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine. That's next. After years of steadfast U.S. support, a change in tone in Washington over Ukraine's leadership and who started the war. So what is behind Trump's sudden U-turn?
Putin will try to get the U.S. president standing on Red Square, not as a respected leader, but as a probe in his own performance.
And why is Donald Trump calling Zelenskyy a dictator? Andrew Chang, host of About That, digs into Trump's claims and their impact.
If you want to understand why Trump just called Ukraine's president a dictator, it's helpful to first understand the platform on which he did it. Truth Social is immensely important to Donald Trump. It is his direct conduit to his followers, where he often creates a kind of repetition-driven reality.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. They should be a state.
In the minds of Justin Trudeau and his cabinet, they no longer believe that this annexation stuff is a joke.
He uses his social media platform to publicize his plans, his executive orders on a whole range of issues before he's even signed them into law.
China's involved with the Panama Canal. They won't be for long.
And it's often where we get the clearest sense of who Trump perceives as a friend and who he perceives as an enemy. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, he now describes as a dictator without elections, ignoring, perhaps, that his country is being invaded by someone who's ruled Russia for the last 25 years. So where does this claim come from? And does Trump really believe that Ukraine brought this war on itself? So Trump's claim that Volodymyr Zelenskyy is a dictator seems to spring pretty clearly from this. He refuses to have elections, is very low in Ukrainian polls. Let's tackle those one at a time. It is correct that Ukraine hasn't had an election since Zelenskyy first came to power in a landslide about 6 years ago. His term should have only lasted 5 years, meaning it should have expired last year, except Ukraine is under martial law because it is actively at war, under attack. Russia has, over the course of 3 years, been pushing its military forces towards the Ukrainian capital. To date, it has managed to capture about 1/5 of the entire country.
Millions of Ukrainians had to flee when the full-scale invasion started. You also have to keep in mind that you have millions of people who are internally displaced. You have hundreds of thousands of people who joined the army who are currently on the front line. There's also the question of the millions of people, of Ukrainians who are currently living under occupation, who are citizens of Ukraine, who wouldn't have the possibility to vote if elections were being organized.
It's also worth mentioning the country's own constitution states pretty clearly that if a parliamentary term is up and martial law is still in place, its powers are extended until basically after the cancellation of the state of martial law, which is all just a fancy way of saying there's an order to things. You can't hold an election while the country is at war under martial law, and we've seen versions of this before. During the Second World War, the UK went through a period where it didn't hold an election for 10 years. It had one in 1935, and it should have had one in 1940, but because of the war, it was postponed each year for 1 year at a time, all the way until 1945, near the end of the war.
The people of Britain decided on the kind of government they want. It was the first general election for 10 years.
Now, I don't know if history or even Trump looks back on Winston Churchill as having been a dictator, because the decision to postpone elections was agreed upon by a majority of parliament. The same is true in Ukraine, where even opposition parties have stated the only winner of an election in wartime Ukraine would be Putin, who they believe would try to influence the outcome.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine. And yeah, I would say that, you know, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people have to, wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, like, you know, it's been a long time since we've had an election. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also.
Trump has now repeated one of Putin's key demands, that even in the middle of a war in which towns are under siege, soldiers and civilians are dying, that Ukraine should shake up its government. And Trump's supporting argument that the people of Ukraine want an election.
The leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens.
This premise is false. The latest numbers I've seen from a major Ukrainian pollster show Zelenskyy with a 57% trust rating, down significantly since the start of the war, but nowhere near 4%.
And in fact, his popularity increased over the last few weeks, especially after those claims by Donald Trump.
Just for reference, that is higher than where most polls put Trump's favorability ratings, which suggest more people in the US than not view him unfavorably. So it's not at all clear to me where Trump is pulling this 4% number from. And I've tried looking. I can't make heads or tails of it. And as is almost always the case, Trump hasn't provided any evidence at all that he hasn't just made this number up. Another statement Trump has made, and has yet to walk back if he misspoke, was to suggest Ukraine was in fact the aggressor. And maybe that's why the US has so far largely shut it out of talks with Russia.
But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
It should go without saying, in the strictest, most literal sense, Russia invaded Ukraine, not the other way around. This isn't even open for debate, so let's move past it. Because maybe what Trump is getting at is to argue that Ukraine provoked Russia into attacking it.
In order to wage his war of aggression against Ukraine, Vladimir Putin had to find a reason. And for him, the reason is a threat, the imagined threat represented by NATO.
Listen to how Trump thinks of Russia's decision to invade. And I'll play a big chunk of it, unedited, so that you can understand his train of thought.
Russia's taken over a pretty big chunk of territory. And they also have said from day one, long before President Putin, they've said they cannot have Ukraine be in NATO. They said that very strongly. I actually think that that was the thing that caused the start of the war. And Biden said it, and Zelenskyy said it, and I think that was one of the reasons, one of the starts of the war. But from long before Putin, they said you cannot have Ukraine going in any way into NATO. And I start from that standpoint.
The case he seems to be making is that Russia had a red line. Ukraine can't join NATO, but it's trying to. It's been trying for decades. And by Trump's thinking, this effort gave Russia a reason to invade Ukraine. And importantly, just to repeat,
they said you cannot have Ukraine going in any way into NATO. And I start from that standpoint.
When Trump says, I start from that standpoint, he's talking about a concession he made to Putin, even before negotiations began, that any talk of Ukraine joining NATO is a non-starter. What's less clear is whether this extends to believing Russia was justified in attacking Ukraine, that its invasion was, in fact, simply a defense of Russia. That's what Vladimir Putin has claimed since the start, and you would have to believe it to believe Ukraine instigated this war, which began with Russian boots marching onto Ukrainian soil.
There is one aggressor, and that is Moscow waging a war against Ukraine.
Trump's most recent comments, filled with epithets, insults, and innuendo, show very plainly Zelenskyy is no friend. And Zelenskyy doesn't seem to think highly of Trump either, by the way. He's now openly accused him of living in a disinformation bubble, and he effectively warned the world at an international forum how close Trump was to being manipulated as a pawn in Putin's grand plan.
Putin will try to get the US president standing on Red Square on May 9th this year, not as a respected leader, but as a probe in his own performance.
So here we have the unraveling of a relationship between two countries, forged in blood and bullets, now reduced to social media posts, calling a world leader under siege a modestly successful comedian turned dictator, ripping off Americans, and all in all, doing a terrible job.
Thanks, Andrew. Coming up, a Canadian dark horse gives it everything she's got.
Ridenour's right there, starts to pump the legs. Here we go.
Emptying the tank in a sprint for gold. The dramatic finish next in our moment. With less than 200 meters to go at the World Cup Women's Triathlon in Napier, New Zealand, Canadian Desirae Ridenour was neck and neck with Emma Jeffcoat of Australia. Now, both athletes pushed themselves to their physical limits, but in the final seconds, it was the Canadian who surged ahead to secure victory. Her first World Cup win is our moment.
Who's got the sprint? Here she comes. It is Desirae Ridenour for the win.
The swim was pretty good. I was near the front for most of it.
Desiree's a good swimmer. Look out for her. She could be a dark horse for Canada.
The bike was pretty solid, and then I shot off and was leading the run at the start.
Ridenour has the lead.
Two other girls joined me, and we just kind of ran together until the sprint.
A 3-horse race coming into the finish.
Honestly, in the last 200 meters when I was neck and neck, I was like, I am the person who wants this the most.
Ridenour's right there.
I have the biggest heart.
Here we go.
I'm gonna win this.
And it is Desirae Ridenour for the win here in Napier.
I crossed the line and I just couldn't really believe that I had did it. you dream about this moment. I still can't really comprehend it.
What a race, what a finish.
I definitely emptied the tank. Happy I didn't throw up, which is nice. I just started crying.
Right on. All of Cowichan Bay, BC is cheering for you. So not only, I mean, it's incredible to do what she did when you're in the best of circumstances, but not only did she have injuries, she dealt with long COVID as well, and still she pulled that off. The first Canadian in 10 years to do that. Congrats. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.